Hi, everyone. It's good to see you again. How's your year going? I hear you're on day, are you on day 12? Is that true? Or are you from different districts? What day are you on for you? Actually, let's just go around and tell me your name, your role, like where you are, like what your role is, and like if you're teaching, what grade you teach. So we can start with Maria. That's okay.
Okay, I'm trying to think of all. My name is Maria.
That's good.
I am with the Excel Center in Shelbyville. I teach, I'm a special education coordinator, and our program is for adults 16 and older who want to complete their high school diploma if they have previously dropped out. We don't do GEDs. It is a Core 40 diploma.
Gotcha. Great. What about you, Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny. I teach at Indiana Connections Career Academy, so it's all virtual. I teach life science. And to your other question, yeah, I think we're about 2 weeks or so in.
All right. Katie?
I work for the Resource Center, and my experience is middle school, 7th and 8th grade. And I absolutely love that age group and think that they are amazing.
Me too. Angela, not getting agreement from Angela.
That's my least favorite group.
Oh.
Sorry, but middle schoolers, I think the evil gene turns on when they hit middle school, and then it kind of turns back off when they hit high school.
That's funny.
And I am also with the Indiana IEP Resource Center and am a school psychologist by background.
Gotcha. All right. And Jessica?
Hi, I am with Indiana IEP Resource Center, and I actually love middle school because, like Angie said, the behavior or their genes turn on, and I just love that. I think it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, special education background. That's about all I got.
All right. Well, welcome. I'm going to share my screen. And unlike Jenny, I have lost my touch with the virtual stuff, which I'm kind of okay with. That it's not second nature anymore. Like it's okay. I'm okay that I'm kind of used to face now. So that is fine. But I've also noticed that my dog has lost his longevity with the Zoom and is getting a little impatient with me right now. He's lying down, so that's good. All right, so we are going to today, let me kind of just do a little reminder of where we've been and where we're headed. I'm glad that we have a small group. We can be chatty. We spent our 2 days in June looking at these things. We ended day 1 with a formative assessment, part 1 up in a shake and share line, looking at some ideas. No, I think we actually began day 2 with that. We talked a lot about readiness differentiation, and we ended with an interest differentiation jigsaw. I don't know if you remember that, but we looked at different strategies, and you had an organizer and you were sharing with different folks. And we were supposed to dip our toe in flexible grouping, but it was like our little toe. We did not really do a ton with it. So today we're going to talk a little about sharing and troubleshooting, and then we'll really get into flexible grouping, and we'll do some work with management. Chapter 9 or 10, depending on the book that you have. No, you have chapter 9 because you have the secondary book. Chapter 9 in the secondary book is dedicated to management, and it's set up according to roadblocks or the things that will keep us from differentiating. Like I can't differentiate because, and it's usually a management thing. So I invite you to check out that chapter. And then this time we'll get into some nuts and bolts as well. And so we are going to do a little bit of looking at flexible grouping, and then we'll look at a Padlet. You'll get some time for some self-exploration of some videos and some tools and stuff that you could use in your classrooms or with your teachers in their classrooms for managing. So if you would be willing to share one of the following, something you've already tried and how it went, something, if not, then something you're excited to try and why you're looking forward to that, or something you're hesitant to try and why maybe you're hesitant about that. I can stretch my screen out so I can still see all of your faces. So I'd love to have you share anything that you're thinking.
Well, one of the things that Katie and I did together was based on all the information that we learned, we did some differentiation training with some teachers at a district who were being thrown into a brand new situation. They were doing a lot of reconfiguring of students who had been bused. I don't know why, but bused to self-contained programs for mild students. And they decided it's time to give that up, and we're getting kids back to their neighborhood schools. And so all of these teachers were now manning rooms, and they weren't together anymore. They were in their own rooms and starting to push kids out and get them into more gen ed. So that was brand new for both of us, and a bit of a challenge, but went well.
Good, good. That's a big challenge.
I would say that some of the things that we have learned at your training, like Angie mentioned, the school getting to go in there, but today I did a training and mentioned the things that we had learned and gave some advice to just a couple different school districts who were struggling with some areas in differentiation. And we got to talk about flexible grouping and the benefits of flexible grouping. And so that's just been really neat to have that information to pass on to others.
Good. Glad to hear that. Welcome, Yvetta. Did I say that right? Yvetta?
You did. Thank you.
So we've been in school for, this is our 4th week, and my first class doesn't start until next week. I'm doing a bridge class for the second half of the term. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to trying is the sign-in on the board, like Coke versus Pepsi, dogs versus cats, something like that, just to kind of get some conversation going. It's going to be a social emotional class. And so really working to build a sense of team and trust among the classmates so that we can, we've only got 4 weeks together. So I think we're going to get a lot more ground covered if we can get up to speed and build some relationships among classmates.
That's awesome, Maria. That's awesome. Yeah. Those little things can go such a long way. That's great. I actually had a teacher, a second grade teacher, in the earlier session say that she was using the lineup according to like how many pizza toppings you like, or just things like that, and then the fold the line and having them talk to each other. And she said that she was surprised by it was a good reminder to her that they don't all know each other. Like you sometimes think that they already know each other because of the neighborhoods they come from, and that they still are meeting each other. And I was thinking, yeah, how much more for middle school did I make that assumption? Oh, they've been in school together, or like in high school, they already know who everybody is, but they don't. So many things that are going on that they think they know each other because they make assumptions about each other, but they don't really know each other. So those are important things to do for, as you said, social emotional learning. Beginning of the year. And the sun is on its way down, and I'm sitting in my west window, so I'm trying to dodge. I'll be moving around trying to dodge the sun here. All right. Well, we're going to keep moving here, and hopefully we'll find some things that might be some things to think about trying as you start or continue your journey here at the beginning of the year. This was the model that we pursued in June back then, and this is where we left things. We, as I said, we addressed it, but we didn't go deeply into it. And so flexible grouping, the reason we want to group flexibly is we want to mix student groupings up so that we can spotlight talent, remove the stigma of grouping, and build community. So Maria, what you were talking about is like, having kids come in and do the community building thing. If we can have them meeting in different configurations, then once they know each other, they stop thinking or worrying about being in groups. That removes the stigma of grouping, that it is not so much tied to, like, oh, I'm in a group, so that means. We want to kind of eliminate that thought bubble from their, from the way they operate. I'm in a group, so that means blank. We want that to be gone. Like, it's just, oh, I'm in a group again. There's really, like, that's just the way the class runs. That helps remove the stigma of grouping, and then that settles that emotional center down so that they can focus in on learning. With so much disruption the last couple of years, though, that it really is like, it needs to kind of be, we need to ease kids into it in some ways. And so we're going to look at a way to do that. We can differentiate these three ways. And so we can also group in these three ways, but these are certainly not the only ways to put kids into groups. And we're going to talk about more than that. But if we want to be really purposeful about the way we group, there are some things to consider. And so this is not the case for every time we put kids in groups. Sometimes we go through these processes. If we're an experienced teacher, we go through some of these decision-making, it's like a decision-making tree, and we go through some of them just automatically. But if you're working with teachers that need to think about it a little bit more, or if you're stuck and you're like, I don't know, like grouping isn't working, then this can help you kind of do some thinking through things. First of all, it's like, what is the purpose of the group? Am I just really trying to build community? Then I don't like it. It can be pretty low stakes. We don't have to put too much thought behind it. If it's more high stakes, like examining a text or a data set or giving feedback or working on a project, then we'll have to think a little bit more about it. How long will the grouping last? It can last 10 minutes. But just because we're putting kids into a group doesn't mean we're giving them a class long sentence or a week long sentence. It can be so quick, can be super quick. Student characteristics, is it readiness, interest, the way we were talking about before, or is it just like they happen to be a really good leader, they happen to be really a good detail person, etc. Composition, should they be grouped because they are alike in similar things, readiness, interest, or because they are mixed, they have different interests, they have different readiness levels. Configuration size, we were talking about this in the last group, like it is okay, especially if you are uncomfortable or your teachers that you're working with are uncomfortable with grouping, to start with partners and just stay with partners for a while. Maybe move to trios. It is okay if your kids are having a hard time working in groups to start with partners. And then if you want to, take a partner set and put them together to make a quad. That is like scaffolding to quads instead of just putting them in quads right away, because you've already done some like bonding and some problem solving within those two partner groups, and then putting them together is much less stressful than taking 4 individual entities and putting them together as a quad. So does that make sense? 2 partner sets together is a scaffolded quad. And there are times there, and especially now this year, like we have to do a little bit of nuancing and massaging as we put groups together, just to make sure that we're reminding kids of how to like work together, how to collaborate and communicate. And then finally, who's going to determine that? Are we going to make the choices for them? Most of the time we will. Sometimes we let students decide, and I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. And then other times we let the activity decides. So bless you, Theo. Dog. Sometimes chance decides just by like you doing the lineup, like how many pizza toppings do you want, and then folding that in half, like that's chance or, random. Sometimes we let students choose, but if we're going to do that, we kind of have to scaffold with like the, clock partners, compass partners, so that we've thought about that ahead of time. Because the last thing we want to do is say, hey, everybody pick a partner, and then have that kid, that one kid or those couple of kids just be like, I don't have a partner. Nobody wants to work with me. That's a real lose situation. But I do have, I have an example from a teacher that I have worked with. She does inquiry-based learning in sixth grade. And she every week she calls a variety of, she calls them by invitation only groups. And she's like, I'm going to need to say so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so right now. And they come up and work with her, and then they go back. And that's usually for readiness, or like maybe they had a question on their homework, or they were absent. So those are, I've got some by invitation only groups I need to say first. And then she'll say, okay, now I've got some open invitation groups. If you had a question on your homework, come on up. If you have a question about, if you want to learn how to use this new website, come on up. So she calls those are the only two kinds of groups that she uses: the teacher choice, invitation only groups, and then the student choice, open invitation. But because she uses them so strategically and so frequently, like kids, there's no stigma attached to working with the teacher. It's just they're like she says that after the week is over, she will have worked with every student at least once, usually more than once. And I think it's just, it looks like it's not structured, but it's like crazy amounts of structure the way she thinks about it in her head to be able to do it that way. So she's kind of like crazy like a fox with that. So, I just saw your question in the chat, Maria. Super resistant to working together in partners, much less groups. Yes, start them off just really with the partners are like really, really short, really low stakes. And do that. Like it's okay to spend a lot of time, like a good chunk of your first weeks of school just doing that. Okay, capacity building. So, and having part of those things being like when you do the lineup, like the greeting question about the pizza first, and then you talk about the content. It's a little bit easier. You got the low stakes stuff in there first. Okay, so that is like that kind of like the decision tree for groups. And so when you've got students say, I don't like my group, or teachers say kids feel bad about their group, chances are the class is not flexibly grouped because there's just one kind of grouping being used. And so that's why we need to kind of think it up. So how can we think about like different ways to form groups? Like we could think about being purposeful about how we use our groups, but how can we mix it up? We want to make sure that students are not in static groups because we want to avoid this whole phenomenon that Carol Tomlinson called the bluebirds, buzzards, and wombats phenomenon, where everyone knows who the good students are and everybody knows who the students who might need extra help or struggle are. So this is, I'm actually going to skip this for right now. This is a couple of stages that can, a little kind of structure that you can think about using either for yourself or for teachers that you work with that can help you advance from one stage to the next to kind of help build capacity either for you, for your students, or both in terms of grouping. And the first one is those proximity partners, and it helps students get used to working together in low stakes fashion without causing a big ruckus because everyone's staying kind of right where they are. And that's just the turn and talk to somebody near you. If it's the think, pair, share. We watched the video of the second set partners, which you could do in a secondary classroom just by having students talk to the person across from them and then repeat what their partner said using their partner's name to the person sitting behind or in front of them. So so-and-so said, like, let's say Maria and I were partners first, and then I would turn around and talk to Angela and say, well, Maria said, and I would repeat what Maria said. So it fosters thinking and listening. And that was called second set partners, for proximity partners. Once we feel like kids are getting kind of good at that, and that's getting to be old hat, and they're almost like seeming bored with that, then we can move and add. We're not going to throw it away. We're going to add to it. We can add this get moving stage. And that's like the fold the line that we were describing. It's also really easy to just pass out a card to every person and have them like, okay, find somebody who has the same number as you, or find somebody who has the same suit as you. Or I have these cards with emojis on them. Find somebody who has a similar emotion than as you do. And again, they're not going to stay together for a long time. It's really quick. This is not for a high stakes event. This is for a quick discussion, especially like it could be during like a little bit of direct instruction to break it up. It could be a greeting thing. It could be a way to, go, process your warm up after students do their warm up. We saw the shake and share or the fold the line thing. This link will be in your slides if you want to watch that again to remind yourself how that looks. But again, this is like if we want them to work with student choice, then we want to make sure that we sign them up ahead of time. Like this would be for a social studies class, that they sign up for the student ahead of time, and we direct, if we've got a student we know who's not going to be chosen, we put a bug in somebody's ear to make sure they sign up for them for their south or their north partner, so that at the time we call that, there isn't anybody who's hanging out there without a partner for student choice groups. Thoughts about get moving? Do you remember the shake and share line that we did, the fold the line? Is that ringing a bell to folks? Yes, no. Do you want to see the video again? Okay.
Christina, while you're doing that, we've also seen some people use, instead of compass partners, using clock buddies, just so that they've got tons of options, right? So,
yes.
You're picking your 11 o'clock buddy or your 12 o'clock buddy, but it just takes a lot of prep on the upfront for the teacher to make sure that I haven't messed up and assigned somebody, or, double assigned or anything like that.
Yeah, and that is why for secondary, I did the compass partners. Clock partners are usually elementary. And when you've got 150 students in a secondary classroom, you don't have time to worry about all of those different times. So the compass partners are just 4, and you can usually connect it to your content so it doesn't feel weird. Like this is like, if you're an English teacher, you could do genre partners. Work with your poetry partner, or you could some way to connect it, because it is really hard to make sure that you've got all of those different kinds of partners, and you haven't repeated or put somebody into a trouble situation. You've got 150 students. But yes, clock partners is the original. That's just the compass partners is just a riff on the clock partners. All right, so here's the reminder. She calls it a traverse talk because she's British and sounds cool, but this is basically what it looked like.
We're going to start with a traverse, and we're going to have a couple of different discussion points that you're going to talk about with different partners. A traverse is a tool for facilitating talk. The first thing we would do is children line up and face each other. You could give a talking point and then they discuss. First talking point, wheelchair users can't play sport. Partner A needs to say something, and then partner B responds and partner A feeds back. And then the traverse moves along, so they work with different partners after that. Our next talking point is boys shouldn't wear pink or play with dolls. Off you go. Traversing works really well for making sure children have a range of different talk partners very quickly. Developing that ability to speak and to question and challenge is really important.
All right, so just a 60-second little glimpse of that one. When I use it, I usually do a quick, I think with you guys, I did quick like iPhone or Android, cats or dogs, Starbucks or Dunkin', like a really quick greeting question, and then ask you a more content-based question to dive into a little bit more. So that's the up and moving, and it can be used to just, shake up a lesson. Like I said, process homework questions. That's one way to review homework too. Like, do your cats or dogs, now talk about question 5. Okay, move, iPhone or Android, now talk about question 6. Okay, now move. You can do like a quick review that way as well. But it's again, not high stakes. All right, thoughts or questions about that? All right. Okay, so who's interested in takes us from kind of random into a little bit more strategy. And that is that we can use some of the community building things that we did to kind of get kids working with kids they might not realize they have anything in common with. And so, for instance, we can look here and we see this, both Alex and Cade have an interest in video games. So we could put them together and say, all right, so if you are in groups with people who share an interest, talk about how your interest is like a cell. Go. And it's very, very quick and low stakes. If you give a survey, you could use this over and over again. For instance, I used this to put kids into groups a couple of different times. This one was their birth order group, using this question right here. Their birth order groups in one of the sections. And one of them, Tim was an only child, and I asked him where he thought he fit, and he said oldest. So I put them into their groups. I had them talk about this. That's one way I could have done it, but what I actually did is I had said, talk about pros and cons of your birth order. Now talk about the readings for today, and that was their reading. It was their reading group, discussion group. I just had them bond over birth order and then talk about the readings. We didn't talk about birth order after the pros and cons. Or if they have done differentiated homework or a differentiated warm-up, we talked about how this is low prep interest differentiation. They can just get with the people who did the same problem and check their work. Four corners interest groups. These are things that my kids were into. I had them just go to the corner that they were working with and do the same thing, just with different ads at that corner, the same kind of analysis. So it's a little bit more, we're invested in the same thing. So we're all going to do the same work, but it's just, around a shared interest. And that's the who's interested in. Doing a little bit more interest in bonding in that one. And those three are definitely like, you're building capacity from one to the other. Here, we're just sitting here we're up and moving, and now we're actually kind of invested in who we are as people. These next two are interchangeable. I don't think that they're both a little bit more high stakes because they have to do with assignments that may have a grade attached to them. The rest of them are not necessarily, they're just processing. They're just, discussion. There's probably not any kind of grade attached, but for these two, this one might have a grade. This one actually probably does not have a grade. It's just processing, but because it's readiness, because it's based on data, it feels more high stakes. And so after we've built capacity with these, after kids are starting to see one another as people, after there's the threat of a group has gone away and a group just becomes part of a fabric of the classroom, then moving into stuff like a menu, or, everybody can like getting in pairs or groups or trios to to do their raft assignment. But what I like about these is that they're producing something. So we have to write a series of Facebook posts, or draw a series of pop-up ads, or create a blog post, a video message, a group. All of these are something is produced that we have to produce together in a group. So it's a visual thing. Same thing with these history prompts. But of course, we're going to show them as option 1, option 2, option 3. That one as well. All of those are things that it's a little bit more investment. Jigsaw would go here too. I know you all are familiar with Jigsaw. Increased investment in interdependence via shared content choices. So whoever chose the same thing here ends up working together. And maybe they do some individual first, and then they get together to pool their ideas and create their final product. But there's a little bit more interdependence. And usually what we think of when we think of groups is this kind of work. But if we haven't built capacity for this kind of work, we introduce this kind of work and we don't get very good products, because students haven't gotten used to working together and negotiating things and figuring out how to, have a productive disagreement. And so this is, that is you choose. And then finally, but not always finally, it could come before stage 4. This could be these, like I said, I think these two are interchangeable, is this idea of like pattern groups. So I'm going to look at the data and I'm going to say, all right, guys, I'm going to have you guys over here. Here are your exit cards and your task card. Okay, guys, I looked at your exit cards last night. I need you guys over here, and here's your task card. And you guys, here's your exit cards back, and here's your task card. So they know they're doing work based on their exit cards. They don't know, we're not announcing your pattern 1, your pattern 2, your pattern 3, but they know they're all working based on something that they did the day before. And that's okay. It's just another way we get into groups. It's not a record scratch moment if they've been in a lot of different groups before. It's just, we're all working on our exit cards. So does that make sense when you look at it? So if you look at this stage, I'd like you to put, or we can either discuss, you can say out loud, or you can put in the chat, which stage is the most comfortable for you right now, and which stage might you want to try next. And you can talk about your teachers. If you are a coach, you can talk about your teachers, or you can even talk about you, like in a workshop. So for you or for your teachers, which is more comfortable for you, is most comfortable for you right now, and what do you want to try next? And I'll go back to those stages so you can see them.
I feel like for me, just the proximity, when I'm told, turn and talk to somebody next to you, I have no problem with that. And I think it gets less comfortable when we're told, okay, I want you to find the area that connects with this and go there. And it's like, oh, but I haven't been sitting with those people, So the idea of kind of working up to those things makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And especially like out, if you're in a classroom rather than in a workshop, those people are going to be the same people. So you'll continue, like if you do that enough, then you're going to get familiar with all the people in that room eventually, if you do that enough. Yeah, great point.
I think I'm really comfortable with the who's interested in, both in terms of being the teacher, the facilitator, and as responding to them, because it gives them something to talk about that they're interested in. So it's not so uncomfortable. It feels a lot safer.
That's great. Yeah, and it feels important to them because it's their interest, it's who they are. So they're going to invest in that. Yeah.
I do like getting them moving too. When I am teaching a government class, I usually start off with, getting to know you type questions. And I'll start off with like, cats are better than dogs. If you agree, you go to one side of the room, and you disagree, you go to the other room. And then before you know it, we're talking about like social policies and what should our government be doing for us. And it's a great icebreaker. So I like getting them up and moving and making them kind of chart out, in the overall scale of one side of the room to the other, where they fall on certain things. And I'm thinking about that.
Yes, that's awesome. I love that. I think I would classify that under would you rather, but I like the way you said it better. Like just, it's like a would you rather or either or.
Yeah.
It just is, there's just something that happens when kids get up and move, especially the kids, the age group that you're working with.
Yeah.
It's developmentally super important.
Sometimes it feels like you need a stick of dynamite to get them out of their chairs and moving, but if you can get them there, it's all good.
Exactly. Like, I don't want to move. You're like, too bad, you need to. It's good for you.
So since I'm virtual, it's a little harder to do some of these things. And what I've done really in the past is just do like random assortment into breakout rooms. But I'd really like stages 3 and 4 are things that I could try, and it would help build community in the class.
Yes, absolutely. And I did do, you can make rooms now. I don't know if you use Zoom. Do you use Zoom? Where you can name the rooms, like the corners. And I've had students, I've done that. So like, go to this room if you're interested in this room, this room, this room, and had them like choose their room and go to it. I got to that at the very end because I think they made that option, like they created that option late. Where you could where they could pick their own room. I don't know if you remember, they can still do that, or if you have to have a certain version of it, but they can pick their rooms now. So I would name the rooms in the chat. Room 1 is this interest, room 2 is this interest, this whatever. And that was fun.
I didn't know that. I'll have to check it out.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, I just looked on this Zoom room, and it gives you the option for assign automatically, assign manually, or let participants choose the room. You're right. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
So it must be fairly recent. That's cool.
It was recent. Yeah. I was like, where has this been all my life? All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, hopefully this is a tool that if you feel like you're things are getting stale and you want to shake it up a little bit, or you're like, this isn't working, I need to do something else, then this is kind of a tool that you can go to say, what is that something else, and a couple of ideas attached to each of those, even though there's many more than what are listed here. Just a couple of ways to do that. Next, I want to move into some of the management pieces, and you're going to do a little bit of self-exploration here on a Padlet in a minute, but I want to show you a couple of examples first. As you are all thinking, I'm sure, flexible grouping, if that's going to work, a lot of other things need to be in place. The idea of putting kids in groups can come with a lot of anxiety, and because there's, anytime you ask, kids to move around, there's a whole lot of issues that can come into play, even in Zoom rooms. Like they go into Zoom rooms and you're not there and things can happen. So for me, whenever I had them go into Zoom rooms, I always had like a slide deck, and I assigned every room to a slide, and they had to answer a greeting question at the top. And then they had to do all their work on the slide so I could watch them all the time. It was the same thing as having something produced in groups. But here are some things that I have found or seen teachers use that I thought were particularly helpful. I learned the traditional model of cooperative learning, which was you assign roles like enforcer, encourager, there was something else, and then the materials manager. And I watched that erode students' confidence very quickly, as you know, one was consistently called the materials manager and one was consistently the enforcer, which was like the leader of the group who told everybody what to do, and the materials manager who went and got the tub of materials and then just sat there for the rest of the time. This teacher thought about what her tasks would need to be successful, no matter what they were, and then had her students sign up for 2 or 3 of those roles. And she explained them, like idea generators, like, you know, if you come up with ideas to, you know, like that you're one of those people that thinks outside of the box, or a problem solver is like, we're not thinking about just about math here. We're thinking about like, if you're stuck, who's going to help get you out of it? A collaborator or ambassador, if you're really good at helping your kids, your friends, like work through their problems, or you help your friends get out of fight, either solve a fight or an argument. A question asker, you're always asking the questions that everybody else is thinking in their heads, but you're the one that asks it out loud. Eagle eye, you notice details, you notice things that like most people don't. Or illustrator or designer, you don't necessarily have to be a good artist for this. You just have to be able to see things in space and see the way things would look good, you know, kind of like just arranged well. And so when this teacher had students sign up, they were encouraging their friends almost more than they were signing themselves up. They're like, you always ask questions. You're always asking the question that I want to ask, or you always notice things, like you always notice when I wear the same shirt like twice in a week, things like that. So I thought that was such a respectful way to get roles. And then the teacher then had to follow through by saying, okay, so I'm going to put you into groups. In this group, you're going to need a problem solver. You're going to need to make sure your problem solver does this. You're going to make sure your eagle eye on step 4 really looks for this. You're going to have to and find ways that to incorporate these roles. She wouldn't use all 6 roles. That's why they had to sign up for more than one role. But she would really find ways to make these roles important in her tasks. So I thought that was really cool. If you're like thinking about your content area, your tasks that you're doing, what's going to need to be in place in many of those tasks, and make up, you know, I don't know what your roles would be, but that's what they were for her in this class. So that is one way to assign roles. These are some group norms. These were compiled after a non-academic experience. We may have talked about these in June, but their students did a non-academic thing, they put together puzzles. They kind of raced to put together the puzzles, and they talked about what did they do that helped them be successful. And as they contributed, the teacher changed the phrasing so that it would apply to any situation. And these were the norms that then were posted in the room and in their interactive notebooks that governed how they were supposed to behave in group situations. And she could always come back to that if things weren't happening the way they were supposed to. She'd be like, let's revisit our group norms. What's happening right now? And it was a guiding contract the students themselves had come up with. So it's not like she was telling them what to do. They had told themselves what to do, which in middle school is, you know, with adolescents, that's kind of important. Let's see here. This is a discussion rubric. This was developed for some high school students. Really fleshing out what a good discussion in a group, like if I'm walking around, this is what I'm listening for in your small groups. This expert, like what I can find evidence of this. Like I want to hear these kinds of questions, like what did you mean by? I expect to hear respect. I expect to hear building on ideas. And you know, the other this growing is, you know, might be where we start, but I think we can fishbowl. I think that this teacher, I would probably fishbowl this first and have students use this rubric to evaluate, so they get familiar with the criteria, and then move into using it with the full group. Fishbowl it on something low stakes, like, you know, what's the best movie you've ever seen or something like that. on a non-academic discussion. And then finally, some self-evaluation tools. This is a self-evaluation tool that we can ask our students to think about in terms of themselves. And I'd ask them to use that, like after a significant group experience, I would ask them to use this. I asked them to use this a couple of times, and only after they used it a couple of times. And it's not a number. It's like, this is what I did well. This is where I need to get better. And after they get used to this, and you have discussions with them about this, then and only then they can start talking about it full group. What did we do well? What do we need to work on? But they need to like look at themselves first and have those conversations with themselves about themselves first before they start pointing flaws out in one another. And I think I used to start right with this and realized I needed to back it up, have them do some self-evaluation first, and then move to the group thing. Because they were much harsher on their group when they had issues to work out themselves before I started requiring this first, if that makes sense. And then just a couple of logistical things. How do you get your kids in groups? This is a high school teacher in Evanston, which is right outside of Chicago. This is what I use. It was based on a teacher that I saw in Louisville. I love this. I am getting, right now, my pre-service teachers are starting their years, and my phone's blowing up with pictures of my former pre-service teachers who are now actual teachers. My phone's blowing up with pictures of their classrooms, and they all are using these things. And I never talked about, you should use lanterns. I just used them. They were so easy, like, because I could just send them to wherever I wanted them to go after a lineup or after, something. And they've all used them in their classrooms. So it's just so user friendly. This is the same thing in a ELL teacher's classroom. And this is in a science classroom. She just flipped it over from one class to the next so they could come in and look and find their names. All right, so we are all in the same room. I would love for you to discuss. We just saw the table tents, hanging signs or lanterns, nameplates, peer and self-evaluation, discussion rubric, group norms, and expert chart. What might you be the most likely to try? If not now, down the road.
I work with two different teachers who use the modern classroom model, but then I have two guided study halls myself. However, I have a mixture of 7th and 8th graders. So if you have other ideas, this would be great. But one thing I've been doing with the attendance questions, I do things like Coke or Pepsi so we can get to know each other. But then at the beginning, I had them write down. So I wrote down the 4 core subjects, and I asked them to sign their name under one or more that they felt comfortable helping or encouraging other students to do. So when I did pull out groups that maybe had a missing assignment, all of them in social studies or something, the other students could move around and help a little bit. So I've kind of put a twist on that just because with the different levels and with it being a study hall, really the only content we go over, we do routines that they could establish for themselves at home, organization and goal setting. Because while these kids don't have IEPs or 504s, they're in there for a reason, usually because they've been missing a lot of assignments or something else like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think some of the things on the Padlet that we're going to look at next might be helpful. I think, are you asking about different roles for that expert chart? Is that what you're thinking? Okay. So helping with the different, you might want to try just proofreading, because that's not necessarily an English thing. It can be an English thing, but it isn't necessarily. Somebody can be a good proofreader and not be great at like poetry or literary analysis, but they can proofread really well. So that might be one thing. Another thing like you might have some students who are good at organization. Like I had some students who were great at organization, but just like they just struggled to read. So it was like, I mean, they did everything they could to be organized, but they needed some additional help. So I would add organization on there. There might be some students who surprise you. It helps somebody organize their binder. They have binders still. Those binders, oh dear. Good gracious.
They do. They're ridiculously large right now.
I know. Why?
So I manage our school's esports team. And I was just thinking, last year was the first year and it was kind of bumpy because, you know, I'm trying to get them to learn how to work together as a team and be respectful of each other and not be toxic and all that. But so I was just thinking the self-evaluation tool would be really a good thing to put into practice to kind of check in on them every now and then, and especially when they're sometimes practicing out on their own and I'm not there. It's something they can do, especially the kind of the respecting my peers box at the bottom kind of stuck out to me. So kind of asking about those social emotional learning aspects there.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. I would add even like time, that just reminded me of like, instead of just organization, I would also add time management. There are probably some kids in there that have so much they're managing with time that we don't even know about, they might be wizards with time management.
Okay,
does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. That's good.
All right, so I'm going to show you guys a Padlet. I'm going to give you about, I think the last group needed just about 10 minutes on it, because I mean, you'll probably, I think this is very, what is happening right now? Just need to get out of here, sir. It's very secondary, it's very middle, and it's very secondary focused, I think. So you might enjoy a little bit more time with it. But it's a collection of like quick 60-second videos, some blog posts, and then some quick tools for, let's see here, I'm not sharing anymore, am I? Stop sharing. And then some just like some, group roles other than what we've shared. There's another way, and you might actually, you might get some other ideas there. It's more of a secondary focus strength finder, that you might find some other additional roles for that. So there's just more nuts and bolts and logistics so I want you guys to take some time to explore. So you can just click on the link in the chat and it'll take you you'll find just columns. Like the first column is blog posts, the second column is videos, and then you've got a variety of things as you go across. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to explore, and then we'll come back, and if you could just share one thing that you found that you think you might use, and that will lead us into some closure. So I'll check in with you after 10 minutes and see how you're doing, but I think that's about how much time we'll take, unless you need some more. And those resources will remain available to you as well. So if you just want to mute yourself and you can mute your camera. I'll still be here even though my camera's, so if you have a question about something or a link isn't working, let me know. But we'll take about 10 minutes and then we'll come back together. I'll give you a heads up about when we're going to come back together. I'd love if you would be willing to share one thing that you think you might use now or later. Use or share. One thing you might use or share either now or later. That's an interesting thing that
I loved that tag idea about critiquing student work. I like that it was super quick. And I think if you have a teacher who's a little bit more hesitant to try different like groupings, that was like a really low risk way, because there's a time limit and very 3 specific tasks that need to occur within that time frame. And I think that sometimes in this technological social media world, students struggle giving any sort of feedback face to face. And so I just really like that for a lot of reasons.
Me too. I like it too. Thank you. That's a newer find for me. Thank you. I was thrilled when I found that.
I love the bouncy balls. I'm like, I can't get this to work. And when I finally click the microphone and I'm like, every little bit of noise makes them jump.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
I am
Yeah.
going to be putting that one into use tomorrow in my resource class because I have a group of 4 girls who just for love or money cannot regulate themselves. And so if it's projected on there and I'm not saying a word, the computer's monitoring it, you can't argue.
Yes, that is so true. Did you see you can adjust sensitivity? So like
Yes.
yeah. So like they'll spend the first 5 or 10 minutes like trying to make it jump, but like once they get used to it, they get used to it. So there's adjustment period, but then once they get used to it, it works like a charm. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you found that one. Love it.
Well, and I'm thinking if I pair it with some Jolly Ranchers, if it doesn't shush them more than 3 times in a period, hey.
Nice. Yes. Nice.
I really like the term professional courtesy because it's we're a career focused school, so I think just phrasing it like that might make it appeal to them a little more. And in a virtual setting, I think it's things like we'd like for them to turn their cameras on during live lesson, which they hardly any of them ever do, or even just like how to greet someone in an email because and use salutations. So that's something we kind of take for granted, but it's something they really need instruction on.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. It's such a respectful term that I think is appealing. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to end with a few thoughts here, which means I need to share again. That management Padlet, I will just continue to add to that. It's not going away. You might find new things on there if you come back to it, but that's a resource that you are free to use however you wish. So, all right, so I want to share one more thing with you. This is just for gauging growth over the course of a year, a couple of years, and even involving like if you've got a professional learning community that you're working with, or just a colleague. Having conversations about this is something you can kind of do a self-evaluation on, like if you want your groups to be flexible or to become more flexible. These are some look-fors for you. But the next one I think is important to get somebody else's eyeballs on. So you might think your groups are flexible according to students, but to have a colleague come in or a coach or an administrator and look for these things. Like, do you hear students using classmates' names often in conversation? Do they seem to know how to get materials and move efficiently in and out of groups and use signals to signal and wait for help? I think you saw some of those examples of systems in the Padlet. Avoid interrupting the teacher when they're with a small group, stuff like that. And then again, to have a look around for yourself, but also for other folks. Are these things in place, these mechanisms? These are some things that we can do to proactively allow ourselves to group flexibly. And so just some look-fors for you, but also to get some feedback from somebody else to see how well you're setting yourself up for success with flexible grouping. I was fortunate enough to be presenting in an international conference with Carol Tomlinson when it was at UVA when one of our visitors asked her, how flexible should my groups be? And in true Carol Tomlinson fashion, she offered a principle rather than a, like, I feel like I am very tool driven and very practical driven, but I thought this principle is just so helpful. After a month's time, every student should have had the opportunity to be both challenged and to be the challenger. And I think that takes some of the pressure off. Like, this is an overtime thing. This is in a week. This is, after a month, has everyone's student gotten some help, but also been able to help somebody else. And that's a good tool to think of in terms of how our students are feeling. And then I had this shared with me, a principal that I worked very closely with. The whole school is using flexible grouping now. And this is my partner school in Charlottesville, and it's just an hour away. And I was working very closely with this principal, and she had this aha one day, just in a conversation. She just out with this. She said, in powerful and productive ways, flexible grouping disrupts teachers and students' views of themselves and of each other. So we were talking about like the impact on her school. And I went, what? I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Because I need to write that down. And I think she's right. I mean, I feel like when we group flexibly, students, the stereotypes they maybe had of one another fall away when they see like the gifts and the strengths of their classmates. And I think that we get to see the same thing. And we get to see our students in a new light, but also maybe wow, I haven't been challenging this student enough, or wow, I didn't expect enough from this student. Or wow, I could have built community better from student community better over the past years that I wish I would have. That was a big aha for me anyway. So that is just a little some wisdom from people that have taught me a lot, that I wanted to pass along to you. And those things can be found. Some of those things can be the tools that you've seen can be found in both of these things. But I will send the PowerPoint I just actually sent the PowerPoint to Marcy so she can send the slides to you. And like I said, that Padlet will be available also. So thank you guys for spending the evening with me after a long day. In the middle of the week, which you still have the whole week to go. So, wow, you guys are amazing. I appreciate you, and please reach out if my email address is on the slides. So please reach out if I can help you with anything. If you have a question or want to talk through something, I'd love to help.
Thanks, Christina. I put the link to the evaluation for this session in the chat. So if you just click right on that, that'll take you to do a quick evaluation. And like I mentioned at the start, you should get somewhere, usually within a few days, but somewhere within definitely 2 weeks, you will get a certificate for 2 hours of professional growth points sent to your email. So thanks everyone for participating tonight, and we hope to see you at some future trainings.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.
Thanks, Christina.
Thank you, Angela.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.